Hey guys, this is Admiral Spicy Ass, and today I'm going to be reviewing Ring of Elysium Early Access. So before I get started, I'm just going to let you know this is going to be a generally positive review, so go ahead and download and try it. I don't think you'll regret it. Let's get one thing out of the way. This is a typical battle royale, so anything you'd expect from the genre it has. So you drop in, there's loot spawns in buildings, you gotta loot up and you gotta kill your opponents, and you have to be the last ones alive in an ever restricting play area. So with that out of the way, let's get into it and see what it does differently. So right off the bat, when you play Ring of Elysium, you will see that the drop selection is a little different. You'll be presented with an overview of the map with several grid cells. Now you can pick a cell to drop in when the match starts. You'll be able to see all the other players' drops, and you and your squad mates can occupy the same square. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic when you're playing squads. You don't know exactly how many people are in a cell. In solos, it's, one occupied cell corresponds to one player. But I really like this because it leads to almost sort of like a pre-gaming sort of strategy. Like you can actually force people away from your spawn by, say, surrounding them with your squad mates. Or you can sort of be deceptive in how many people are dropping in the area by all occupying the same square. One of the other things I really like about this feature is you can choose the pace of the match and you don't get surprise drops, right? Countless times in other BRs I've been like, let's drop here, let's go for something a little bit slower, and it ends up that half the plane or the bus ends up at that location. So with this, you get a really good idea of what you're getting into. If you want to go fast paced, you can drop near other players. If you want to, start off slow and just get geared up, you can pick somewhere that's relatively far away from anyone else. The other thing I really like about this is any area on the map is accessible, right? When you have the traditional plane or bus trajectory as seen in like PUBG or Fortnite, there's only a certain range of the map that's actually accessible. If you want to go to the far reaches of the map, you have to get lucky and find a vehicle or some other mode of transportation to get there. With this, the map is wide open. You can choose anywhere to go. That really mitigates the effects of RNG. So you can't really get a bad drop. You can't get a bad trajectory. You can't get mixed up with a population of players that you don't want to be mixed up with. It just gives you a lot of control before the game even starts. And you're more likely in the mid game to come across players because they're so spread out over the map. There's not a concentration of players along a vector as you would see in the traditional trajectory drop. You don't really know who you're going to encounter on your way to the safe area. And the other thing that I like about it is you're guaranteed a small grid of influence to loot before you encounter anyone. So even if a person near you were to sprint straight to your grid cell where you dropped, chances are you've probably looted 1, 2, 3 buildings before they get to you, which gives you a really good chance to get geared up, at least to a certain extent, and to fight them when you come across them. The thing that I do dislike about this, though, is that there's a certain lack of high octane, high opponent count drops. So there's no school equivalent, right, in PUBG where 25 people on the plane drop and go to school and it's just chaotic, right? There's nothing like that in this because you can only have 1 person per square in solos and up to 4 people per square in squads. And so like you can imagine, 10 people taking up 10 squares, you've basically covered the entire city. So that's basically, there's like a soft cap on the amount of people that can drop in close proximity. So if you're trying to go for super high octane stuff like that, you're not really going to see that too often. All right, and in this drop selection phase, you'll also have a class selection. So the classes are basically mobility kits. You'll have a glider class, you've got a snowboard class, and you have a climber class. Now, the glider class, it's rated as having the most mobility, and it has the smallest inventory space. Snowboard is right in the middle. It has medium mobility and medium inventory space. And the climber has the most inventory space but the least mobility. And each class starts with gear. So right when you drop in, you'll start with a pistol, or in the case of the climber, a shotgun. Starting with a weapon is a huge plus for me because it further mitigates the effect of bad RNG. Nothing to me is more frustrating than dropping into a battle royale game and looting 4 houses and finding nothing. right? And then getting blasted away by someone who has a fully kitted M4 all of a sudden, right? With this, you at least have a fighting chance. If you do get unlucky, you at least have something small to try to win against someone that's attacking you. So what do you need to do with all this mobility that these classes provide? Well, ROE does something really nice. It eliminates the trudge that is present in games like PUBG. So if you've played PUBG, I'm sure you've been there where you drop kind of far away and the zone is on the complete opposite side of the map and you can't find a vehicle, so you just stash your weapon and you start running. And you run for 5-10 minutes, finally get to the zone, and then you have to do it again. Well, Ring of Elysium, all the classes have a certain level of mobility, with the most mobile ones being able to cover large spans of distance in a relatively short amount of time. So even when you're far away from the safe zone, you can cover large distances really quickly. And this is really important for maintaining at least a steady pace. There's no severe drop in pace ever because you can travel so fast. And the mobility also changes your behavior depending on your gear, both from a positioning standpoint and item management standpoints. I have to be really careful when I'm playing the glider class to not pick up things that I absolutely don't need because my inventory space is so limited, but I get that extremely high mobility. I've seen streamers and other squads in games use the glider class to actually position in such a way that they can circle around a valley below or a town below and mark out enemy squads for the team, which is a really interesting use of the mobility that I hadn't considered until I saw someone do it on a stream. This kind of mobility also allows you to drop in on unsuspecting opponents, right? Like maybe you tag them a few times and you can push real quick and get on top of them and eliminate them. Or maybe they're fighting someone else and you drop in behind them and then your friends come snowboarding down the mountain and then the climber guy's back there just trying to catch up, you know? With the mobility, there's different ways of attacking the enemy, which I really like. And the other thing that I'll mention about mobility is that there's abundant and varied vehicles. I, so far in my time playing, haven't had a problem finding a vehicle whatsoever. If I can't get to a mountain to snowboard down or to glide down, it's usually not too long before I find a vehicle and I can just be on my way to the safe zone. And the vehicles that are available are, you have the classic cars. There's even a monster truck car that's high off the ground with huge wheels, but it's basically a car, There's snowmobiles, which are basically just motorcycles skinned differently. But the one that I really like, one of my favorites, is the gondola. So basically a ski lift sort of deal with stations where you can load and unload players. And each gondola seats up to 4 players, and they actually have paths. Like you can get on one, you can ride it across the map, get off at one station, get on another. You can shoot out of the gondolas. It's really cool. So that's yet another travel option that you have at your disposal if nothing else is available to you. So what's the need for all this mobility besides just kind of cutting down on that mid-game trudge? Well, of course you have the shrinking play area, and this strategy is a little different in this game. Instead of being a traditional constricting circle, the map is cut up into sort of a simple jigsaw puzzle with several polygons connected to one another. The first storm zone that comes in blocks off a gigantic chunk of the playable area. I would say maybe 75% of the map is blocked off at the start, which isn't too different from other battle royales. But in my opinion, this is better than the circle, because you can have situations where a literal funnel is formed, where people from all over the unsafe area come across and they're forced into a small sliver of space. So you imagine a circle. It's obviously round on all sides, so it's kind of even. If people come in from different directions, they're all dealing with the same kind of curvature of the safe zone, right? Well, in this case, you can actually have situations where there's a little sliver of safe space that cuts in to the unsafe area. So you might have a little wedge of safety in between 2 areas of danger. And that's really cool because you can actually use that to your advantage. You can position yourself inside of that wedge and pick off people that are coming into it, because it will end up being the shortest distance into the safe zone. You can decide to go wide to where maybe people aren't expecting you, take a longer trek but end up safe somewhere way off, north or west or something. So the lack of border uniformity actually forces different movement patterns and makes using the zone as a sort of cover more useful than a circle would be. And of course, the zone is traditional in that if you get caught in the zone, it will deal damage over time. But the interesting thing about this game is that it actually restricts your visibility too, so you get the storm effect. Your visibility is kind of restricted in other Battle Royale games, but this one really restricts it. Like, the draw distance is way down, the view distance is way down, so you can't really see people that far in the distance, and you can't really see outside of the safe zone that well, which is, you know, pretty similar to other Battle Royales. But really, while you're in the zone, it's very difficult to see people that are a significant distance away from you. Okay, and of course, with the ever-shrinking zone, there has to be an end game, right? Well, Ring of Elysium handles this in a really fun way. So, the final zone, a rescue helicopter arrives at a random point in that zone with only 4 seats. And what it does is it hovers above the designated area on the map and will drop a rope ladder. And the players have to climb the rope ladder to get to the helicopter to claim a seat. And once you've claimed a seat, you win. I really like this system for a number of reasons. For one, it gives players an objective to play towards rather than simply eliminating all players. I never found that simply killing the last remaining people was too terribly interesting. It is intense, but without really anything to work towards, it leads to a lot of camping and playing really safe and basically just waiting for the zone to constrict further to the point where you can't avoid confrontation anymore. And that works to some degree, but I think that the objective works a lot better because it opens up a lot of new playstyles that I haven't seen in other BRs. So you'll have the helicopter sitting there, people are positioned however they're positioned in the final zone, but you can almost always get a visual on the helicopter and the rope ladder, which means that it's not always safe to just bum rush the helicopter and grab a seat right away. If you have favorable terrain, or if you happen to be close to the helicopter drop zone, you might be able to get and sneak a spot really quick before anyone knows what's happening. But chances are, if you climb that rope ladder, you're going to be exposed and people are going to shoot you right off of it. So what you have to do is you have to really play safe. You have to kind of walk around the area, scout the area, make sure that you know where everyone is. And at this point in the game, there's, you know, probably on average 10 people left in this zone. So it's 10 people fighting for 4 seats. So you have to really know what the enemies are doing, when it's safe to go. Or you could take the route where you're the camper and you're watching the helicopter. Maybe you have enough meds to tough it out and you just sit there and watch until you know you can be guaranteed a spot on the helicopter. There's many viable strategies here, which is really fun and really intense. And it's also a great feeling when you manage to sneak on top of that helicopter, not knowing if you're going to get shot or not, inching your way up, and just, you know, the anticipation's building whether you're going to make it or not before you take a shot in the head. And that's always fun because it's a risk-reward play that doesn't exist really in the traditional eliminate all players style of winning the game. So you might be asking yourself, well, what's to prevent people from camping till the end like in normal BRs? You know, why doesn't everyone just camp the helicopter endlessly? Well, the storm continues to advance as normal until the whole map is covered in storm. But this area is actually special because when the storm advances to the final area with the helicopter, it will reveal all player positions. And that's another layer that I really like because if you're camping, you better make sure that you're geared and meted so that way you can continue to camp. It's not going to be enough for somebody at half health with no meds and a submachine gun to sit there and camp anymore. They have to get a move on, otherwise they have no chance of winning. So it's really good. You have to play to your strengths. You have to play to your equipment. You have to analyze the situation, see what kind of role you can play in that final zone, and then go and do it. And if you decide correctly, you're rewarded with a victory. So I think that Ring of Elysium has one of the most fun Battle Royale endings I've played. I mean, it's way more fun in my opinion than the traditional, the circle just keeps collapsing until everyone's dead. So I want to make some other comments that aren't as important to me but are definitely worth mentioning. So the gunplay. The gunplay is okay at best. It's not quite as arcadey as a Call of Duty game, but it's certainly not as realistic as something like PUBG. The recoil in Ring of Elysium is generally pretty low, but not to the point where weapons are lasers. Some weapons are in laser territory, but only after you get the relevant attachments for them. There is bullet drop and bullet velocity to consider, which is pretty universal across Battle Royale games. And I've heard some comments from some of my friends that the gunplay feels clunky in general. So it's definitely not the thing to play Ring of Elysium for. If you're looking for good or excellent gunplay, you're not really gonna find it here. It's still fun, but it's not as intense as something like PUBG, or doesn't require as much skill as PUBG. There are crate drops during the game, and the interesting thing that this game does differently, and I don't know if it does it differently for a reason or just to be different, but the crates are spherical in this game. So you'll get interesting situations where the crate will land at the top of a hill and roll all the way down it. I guess it's kind of, I don't know if it's a fun mechanic or not, because you could see a crate from the distance and go to it and then try to find it, and you can't find it because it's rolled, you know, a kilometer away in the opposite direction. At that point, it becomes more chance if you find it or if you're really keeping an eye on it, but I don't really understand the design decision behind that. And one other thing I'll mention is that there are some genuinely surprising moments in this game. One time my squad and I were in a gondola, and we were just kind of shooting at people that we saw, and we thought we were pretty much invulnerable, but the people that we were shooting at ended up shooting our gondola down, and we all died, and that was totally unexpected to us. And then there was another time where I was playing the climber class and I was going across a zip line, and some people shot me down off of the zip line, and immediately afterwards an avalanche came down and killed them and destroyed the town that they were in. And that was, needless to say, very unexpected. I did some research and I found out that this is actually a scripted event that happens in a specific town when the storm is approaching. So I think it was just chance that I happened to be in that place at the right time. But still, it surprised me and it gave me a good laugh, and I was really impressed that something like that was actually in the game. As for progression, it's a loot box based cosmetic acquisition which doesn't affect gameplay, so it's the same deal as PUBG. You get a crate, you open it, and you get a skin. Now, I actually haven't had a crate that's been locked behind a key yet. I don't know if those don't exist yet or if there are plans to add them, but so far I've gotten many crates and I've been able to open them all for free. So I don't know what their monetization plans are. I would imagine they'll have keys at some point, but currently it doesn't seem like they do. Okay, so now that I've mentioned everything that I like about the game, let's go over some of the negatives. So the mid-game pacing, though they take a lot of steps to sort of mitigate the slowness of the mid-game, it still is a little slow sometimes. I haven't found it to be as slow as the mid-game in something like PUBG, but I still think they could do a little bit better in this regard. Mobility is not really an issue. I don't have a problem with the mobility at all, but I think they could probably fix the slowness by just making the storm advance faster. The audio leaves a lot to be desired in this game. A lot of the reload sounds like someone slapping around a Nerf gun, which is not very satisfying and doesn't really give that weighty feel to the weapons. The glass breaking sound effect is so simple that it's borderline infuriating, and there isn't much variation in the actual sound effects of the firing weapons. You can definitely tell the difference between heavier sniper type guns and assault rifles, but trying to differentiate between the weapons in those classes is not very easy. Another negative thing is there's a lack of detailed video options, and there's unclear options in general. So I think the video settings dropdown is 3 presets, which don't use standard language at all. Usually you would expect high, medium, low, or ultra high, medium, low. There's like, I don't even remember them off the top of my head. They're like standard and low, and like, I don't even remember. They're not clear at all. You play with the settings, you figure out what they are, but they're not what you would expect. And there is no advanced graphics option, so you just have that drop down, and that's basically it. A lot of people were reporting performance problems. I personally am running a GTX 1080 at 1440p, and I don't have any performance problems, but I still think it's worth mentioning that people have reported problems. Granted, those reports might have been before they've followed up with a few patches to fix optimization, but I just thought I'd throw that out there so you guys know. And lastly, the last negative thing I can say about the game is that the animations aren't that amazing either. They're not terrible, but they're definitely not very... They don't blow me away. They're not anything special. They work in the context of the game. They get the point across of what action's happening, but that's basically it. So in conclusion, I have had an insane amount of fun with Ring of Elysium. I think I'm basically addicted at this point. It's taking all my willpower to not play it and to actually be productive. I would definitely recommend go download and try it. There's literally no risk to doing so. I mean, if you have a data cap, you might waste, 6 gigabytes of your data if you don't like it. But it's worth trying. It doesn't cost anything. I haven't had to spend money at all in that game, and it's a lot of fun. If you have friends, I definitely recommend playing it with friends. I don't think it's as fun solo, but some people like playing solo, so I mean, if you like solos and other battle royales, I don't see why you wouldn't like solos in this game. But yeah, grab some friends, download the game, give it a try. Alright, that's it for my Ring of Elysium early access review. I hope you guys found it helpful. Be sure to like and subscribe the video if you want to see more content like this, and I'll see you in the next video.